So I know all my heavy boys are probably rejoicing that all of us roly-poly builds are finally dead, and light armor is in the ground, but I don't think that light armor is in the spot that everybody thinks it's in. Um, if you have been watching the stream, then you are probably just as confused as I have been as to what's been going on. Um, I've been PvPing a lot, and as you've seen in the couple of videos that I've uploaded already, we've been having some really good fights, and light armor seems to be looking good in those fights. But there is the whole other 50% of the fights that I get in where something just doesn't feel right, and I haven't been able to put my finger on it until today on stream, where we were able to get in I think 4 or 5 duels with a really good PvPer, which we're going to take a look at in a second here. But I think I finally managed to figure out what is making light armor feel so bad. And what I initially thought it was, and what it kind of felt like, was just lag. And it seems like an easy um, answer to jump to, considering that we just got a giant patch for a huge zone, and we have an influx of players at which the servers haven't really felt in months. So I definitely thought that, especially during prime time, that it was just lag that was really causing all these issues. But it's actually not necessarily lag, but kind of lag. Uh, we're gonna kind of break it down here in a second, but talking about light armor before we take a look at these fights here. Since the beginning of the game, light armor has had the lowest amount of physical and elemental resistances, which makes it to where pretty much any build or any weapon in the game can 1 to 3 shot you. But the inverse of that is we have the best mobility in the game, coming from our dodge roll, where that is where a bulk of your survivability comes from on light armor. From the beginning, the way you survive in any light armor build is by not getting hit. And when you break it down a little bit further, there's a couple of primary ways that you stay alive on any light armor build. Number one, it is your roll dodge, and both the distance that you gain from it, but the iframe. Like I mentioned, not taking damage is how you survive on light armor. So the dodge is the first thing that has not been feeling consistent. I've been feeling like I've been getting hit by both light attacks and abilities just in the middle of my dodge, which not only negates the point of the dodge, wastes our stamina, slows us so our next dodge costs more stamina, but essentially puts us into a situation where you lose a fight if you get hit during that situation because of how much resources and things you gave up for that. Now, besides your dodge, your defensive abilities is the number one way that you survive on light armor builds. Now, I can't speak for every single combination of light armor setups, but I run rapier builds, and in this particular build here, we're running rapier and greatsword, and we have two very strong defensive abilities. Well, two kinda parry and calamity counter, but also defensive stance and a lot of things that we get through defensive stance. Now, I know this is a little bit of a long-winded intro, but just stay with me here because it's all going to kind of come back around. If the core defensive abilities of your build are not consistently functioning, as I mentioned, light armor is the weakest armor in the game. Weapons in the game have only gotten stronger since the beginning of the game, and light armor's armor value has stayed the same. So we're at a point where everything is doing is the most damage it's ever done, and if any one of your defensive abilities do not function or do not go off, at this patch currently you die, and that is the reason why I think light armor feels as terrible as it does. Now, this is a disclaimer. I'm going to just honestly delete any comments that have failed to listen to the video this far or watch the entire video, but this is not a excuse or reason why the fights have gone this way or why I wasn't able to beat this player in a fight or anything like that. As I mentioned, Sando here is a player that I've PvP'd with for a very long time on this server, and he is a very, very good PvPer. So I'm taking nothing away from this player, and on top of that, he is running a setup which we virtually can't win. He's running a heavy sword and shield, defiant stance greatsword build. So we have to make literally zero mistakes to have the fight go the way it's not going to go in these upcoming duels here. But let's take a look at a couple of these fights here. So taking a look at the first fight here, we're going to start with the rapier, try to open up with the skyward slash, and he gets a beautiful shield bash on our way down. I go for a riposte, he dodges, and then I also block with our rapier. So he breaks our guard, and we just make a couple of mistakes, which puts us in a really, really bad spot early. And we're going to be slowed permanently here unless we can make some distance, so we flush away. But he follows up with the leaping strike, and we're at a pretty bad spot. I'm trying to see if I can find an opening to land a stun here. We switch to the rapier and land a beautiful parry on the downward hit of skyward, but he again lands a beautiful shield bash, and I'm going to replay the last parts of that fight there. Now, if you take a look at my Calamity counter, we go for the ability after the Steadfast, and it just doesn't use it, puts us on cooldown, which makes us take the heavy, and then we end up having to forced into that lower distance dodge roll and taking that second hit. Now, would the fight have been won had the Calamity actually gone off? Probably not. It might seem small, but we're going to take a look at a couple of examples just so you guys can get a real idea of what I'm trying to get across here. Now, taking a look at the second fight, we're going to go ahead and see if we can make a little bit less mistakes than last fight. But shield bash is something that I'm going to be looking out for this time. We get it out immediately out of the fight, so we go for the skyward knowing that we're safe, and then we kind of just go for an exchange. Now, right away, the Faultless Defender perk on Greatsword is supposed to reduce the block stamina damage you take by 50%. So not only that, but Greatsword only has 68 block stamina damage. So the Greatsword does more block stamina damage than it's supposed to do, and our perk doesn't work. Our main defensive perks, and we are immediately put on the back foot. But jumping back into the fight, we find ourselves back in here after using a potion and making a little bit of distance, and we're gonna primarily go ahead and try to find the shield bash again. With the shield bash out, we go on the offensive, we land the skyward slash, put the Rens out, land a beautiful parry in for the first time we get him low in the fight. Try to follow up if we can to see if we can close out the kill, but he lands a beautiful steadfast, which stops us on our track here. We time the Calamity counter well, but our perk again does not work as our stamina gets broken there. And with no life left, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the last couple of sequences there. So again, Faultless Defender reduces your stamina damage taken from hits by half. Greatsword has 68 stamina damage, meaning, or block stamina damage, and at 45 stamina we get guard broken, which means our perk just didn't work. On top of that, after we make our way out of that fight with the flesh, we actually just timed the parry correctly there, and then just get shield broken, or shield bashed anyways. So literally in one fight, all of our defensive options did not work there. Our riposte did not work, our Calamity counter, and our Faultless Defender just did not function. And as I mentioned, with every single weapon doing as much damage as it does now, with fights happening like this, I think that's the thing that has been making light armor feel so bad. Now, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but to survive in light armor, you need to properly play your defensive cooldowns. And if at its core, the abilities themselves are just not working the way they're supposed to, that is probably a pretty big reason as to why light armor feels like you can just die to everything. Now, once again, this is not to diminish anything from the player that we're fighting. The very, very next fight, seemingly everything seems to be working fine, and we still lose the fight. So again, this is not to say that this player wouldn't have beat us in this fight, regardless. We're fighting a very, very good player against our straight-up counter, but the thing that makes it frustrating is that it's not like the game consistently feels bad. It'll feel good for a fight or two. Randomly in the middle of a fight, it'll feel like what I've been showing you in the video. And I'm not exactly sure what to put it on as to be the culprit of this issue. Now, this is not to say that light armor feels the same or doesn't feel or hasn't felt any nerfs. It's definitely been nerfed, but to kind of prove a point, but not really, because the only fight that I ended up winning here was the one where his food ran out. But I've been playing against a majority of players, and when the fight or when PvP feels good, there's no lag, and the abilities are functioning as they should, then I feel that light armor is still viable, but it needs to be a consistent experience, because lag is the #1 killer of like any PvP game. And with a game as fast-paced and as critical as New World's PvP is, if there's any sort of lag or kind of like trickery going on with the abilities, as there's been going on since the patches dropped, then PvP is not going to feel fun. So yeah, that's what I've been finding. If you've made it through the entire video, you're a real one, and I always appreciate you guys. But I hope this video does give a little bit of insight into light armor. I don't think it's necessarily dead yet, but it definitely will need some work. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.